Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. We want you to remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, and you are fully loved by Him.
You have been designed on purpose by God with unique gifts and passions in order to love and lead those around you. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer.
And I'm Esther's co-host, Holly Kane. I'm a wife, mom, and business owner. I also write at hollykane.org, where I focus on my passion for women's ministry.
Together, we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We are so glad you're here with us. Hi, friend, and welcome to episode 136 of the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, and today I am here with you solo, and I'm going to be sharing a little bit from my heart about some things that God has been working on me about, and some things that I want you to be able to take away and apply to your own life and leadership. Specifically, I'm going to share about why it is so important for you to step into your gifts and use them. So on this podcast, we say that we want to help you embrace your gifts and lead with confidence. This tagline really came out of my own experience of going from not really understanding or using my gifts and following a path that I thought maybe other people wanted me to follow. Or maybe it was just what I had put on myself as an expectation, or what I thought was the quote unquote right thing to do. So I went from that experience to starting to actually recognize, acknowledge, and use my gifts. And once I began doing that, I also started to be able to lead more confidently. I was less caught up in comparison because I could see the things that God had called me to do, and that they were just the things that I was doing that other people maybe couldn't do as well as I could or in the same way. And then there were other things that other people were doing that I wasn't able to do. So after going through that journey for myself, I started looking around and seeing how so many other women were in the same boat that I had been in previously. They didn't really understand their purpose in life. They didn't really know what their gifts were, or maybe if they knew what they were afraid to step up and use them. I also saw women who were incredibly capable women, but they were holding back. I saw a lack of confidence with some who were just, again, capable, beautiful, amazing women of Christ, but they had this lack of confidence, and that was keeping them from doing what God had put on their hearts to do. And so I started digging into God's word. I started really exploring these ideas of purpose, of calling, looking at the practical ways that we as women could step into our gifts and be able to lead with confidence. And ultimately, a lot of that research and digging into God's word and journeying through that process for myself became some of our podcast episodes that we've done in the past. And then ultimately, it became my course, The Confident Leader Catalyst, which is designed to help women step out of their comfort zone and into their calling with clarity, confidence, and courage. In that course, I walk through the process of understanding your source of confidence, which is God, and how to start actually walking in that confidence. We go through developing a biblical understanding of purpose, and then we work on clarifying your own unique calling. We also talk about your personality and how this impacts your purpose, and we really dig into figuring all of that out. And then we look at living out leadership by following the example of Jesus, and how to build courageous confidence by taking action. So you may have heard me talk about this course before, and you might be wondering, why am I mentioning this right now? Well, this is all related to what God has been working on me and in me in the past few months. So I'm going to share a little bit about that with you. So over the past few years, I have been focusing in a variety of places. I had my blog for over 10 years and transitioned that to my personal blog name, estherlittlefield.com, and then later started this podcast, and that's been in the past 3 years. And then from that, I created a membership called the Confident Leader Club, as well as my mini course, Confident Conversations, and then the larger course that I was just talking about, Confident Leader Catalyst. And last year, I released that course and ran it with live coaching 2 times throughout the year. And then in addition, since January of 2017, I have had a service-based business, and I have worked with clients in their businesses behind the scenes doing all kinds of different things, from social media to graphics to websites to sales funnels to podcast launching and management and more. And I actually still have a couple clients that me and my team serve. We still manage a couple podcasts. And then in addition, for one of those clients, I am her director of marketing, which means basically I help with a lot of the marketing side of her business, getting her program and her content out there for people to know about and to purchase, and kind of all the things that go along with that. So in 2020, at the beginning of the year, I had decided to stop taking on new clients for implementation services in that business. I felt like God was shifting me into doing more teaching, more consulting, and primarily geared towards Christian women business owners. And that's where I started the Christian Woman Business Podcast. And I also started offering strategy sessions, and I ran the Shine Online Audience Accelerator, which was last summer, and that was amazing, with an amazing group of women who came through that. In addition, I also created a mini course at the end of 2020 called Podcast in a Weekend, and also a larger course, Podcasting Simplified, which I've been releasing live in January of 2021. And that was available for people who grabbed the mini course. They could choose to upgrade and add on that bigger course. And later on, that will be available separately as well. So all of that has been happening over the past about 5 to 6 years in different parts of my journey I've just referred to. And then in addition, I have shared previously that I also have it in my heart to write a book, or more than one book. And so I have been working on a proposal with the hopes of getting a book contract at some point. And if you listened to our reflection episodes that Holly and I did at the end of 2020, you know that I definitely did not make the progress that I wanted to make on that proposal in 2020. And obviously there are a lot of reasons for that. As we know, 2020 kind of went off the rails, but there's a lot of factors that have gone into why I didn't make progress on that. And I'm going to share a little bit more as we go forward. So as you can tell, even though over the past couple of years, I have started to niche down more and more, I've gotten more and more clear about who I feel called to serve, who I want to be able to impact. I have still been doing a lot of different things. And at the end of 2020 into the beginning of 2021, I have just been praying and seeking God for guidance. I took about a week off of social media. I took a night and a day away by myself to pray and process and all of this. And I had previously, right at the end of 2020, I had kind of started to make a plan for 2021. And I had some really big ideas and some really big dreams about how I could serve the leadership audience and the business women and my clients and all of these different things. And as I looked at that plan, I started to kind of realize, like, if I did all the things that I had outlined, that I had ideas for, I was kind of never going to be able to sleep. And that's not a good place to be when you are running a business or when you are just trying to serve God in a healthy way. So I started to just, again, reflect and pray about this. And I talked to one of my most trusted business mentors and friends. And she really challenged me to look at where I am most gifted and where I can have the most impact. And she just reflected back to me some things that I had already been kind of sensing in my spirit that God was leading me towards. And several other things happened in the same time frame that continued to emphasize this message, this idea of, where are you most gifted, Esther? Where can you have the most impact? And this is why I wanted to bring this concept up to you and why I wanted to share this episode. And I'm being super transparent and vulnerable here because I'm telling you kind of where I'm at right now. A lot of times when we share our personal stories, we share where we have been in the past, but this is kind of like a here and now situation that I'm sharing with you. But I really think it's relevant to you in your own life, in your own leadership, if you're listening to this podcast right now. Because for me, the thing that I kept coming back to, that kept being obvious to me, is that my natural gifts and skills are in the business and marketing space. I absolutely light up when I get to talk to one of my clients or one of my students about how they can strategically grow their business, their email list, or get their message out in front of more people. And anytime, even when I'm involved in our church and our ministry, it's always been around the communication side of things, around how we can do better job on social media or communicating what we have at our church to offer to other people. So essentially the marketing side of things. And I constantly think about wording and the way things are presented so that people will want to know more, so that we can get people curious and interested in what we are doing and what we are offering. And so what God was showing me privately and with the confirmation of others is that I needed to lean in to these gifts. I needed to truly embrace them and focus on using these particular gifts to serve my people. And what I realized was that meant that some of the things I had been doing previously would have to go, would have to at least get paused or potentially just phased out. I would have to cut out some of the ideas and the plans that I had for the year if I was going to really lean into using my gifts and making the biggest impact that I could. And part of what I was getting hung up on is the fact that using these gifts in this way comes easy to me. So getting onto a call with a client or a student and looking at their podcast or their opt-in page or their sales page or helping them figure out, what needed to change or tweak in their business and their sales funnel or all these different pieces, that comes easy to me. The strategic side and figuring these things out in combination with the way I'm naturally wired, it's also been things that I have been continually learning over the past 5 or 6 years and actually investing financial resources into growing in those areas. So I have done other things, and over the past few years, there's been other things that I've done that I've enjoyed, but I haven't always felt like I'm really fully using my gifts in those things. So when it comes to you, and you using your gifts and stepping into your gifts, I want to remind you that often those things are going to be the things that come the easiest to you. And for some reason, we tend to have resistance to this. At least I did. Maybe you don't experience that, but I tend to have resistance to the idea that using my gifts fully and fully walking in the calling that God has for me could potentially be doing things that are actually easy for me. Now, I'm not saying that following God is easy and that serving Him or leading is easy. Don't take that the wrong way. But what I mean is that when you are fully using the gifts that God has given you and the natural wiring that He has created you with, then you are going to be most fully alive and most fully able to make an impact, even in the times when those situations can be hard and you might be going through a season of difficulty. And so I just want you to know that. The other thing that I want you to know is that this all is not something that becomes clear overnight. Okay, so even in my course in Confident Leader Catalyst, part of that course is helping you figure out your gifts and getting clear on your personality and your wiring and all of that. But that's an ongoing process. I give you a starting point in that course, but it's not the end, because even for me, this has been a several year journey of getting more and more clear on where I am most gifted and how I can use those gifts and make the biggest impact. So I just want to make sure you remember that this is not like an overnight thing. But let me just give you a little bit of an example of this idea of the gifts that you have. They may be the things that come easiest to you. So I did life coaching a few years ago with Elisa Pulliam, and I absolutely love her. She's been a guest on the podcast before. She's a friend, and I went through some life coaching with her. And part of what we did was we did an assessment. And in this assessment, I found out what I'm actually naturally wired in and good at. And one of the things was that I scored like a 99% on visual observation. And this means that I am just really naturally good at noticing every little tiny detail of everything and visually. So, when I look at written language, when I look at copy, when I look at a sales page or an opt-in page, I can just quickly pick up on the little things that need to be tweaked, or the spelling errors or the grammatical errors that are there. My eye naturally goes to those places and I notice those details. I also figured out that I'm really high in problem-solving skills and idea generation. And I kind of knew those things, but when you actually have like on paper confirmation of some of the things that you kind of think about yourself, it just helps you to be more confident in the fact that, yes, these are the things that I'm good at and that I find easy. So the observation and the problem solving, those are things that just come naturally to me. And so again, for some reason though, I have either undervalued those gifts or I've tried putting myself into, things that I could do that I wasn't naturally using those gifts. I wasn't doing those things and I was doing other things that maybe I could do because I could learn to do them, but they weren't fully allowing me to walk in my gifting. So I'm going to share a little update with you about where I'm going moving forward with all of this information. And again, I'm hoping that I can weave in how this applies to you, because I don't want this episode to just be all about me. I really want you to walk away knowing how can you step into your gifts and embrace what God has called you to do. Okay? So as we move into 2021, I have decided to step into my gifts fully to serve Christian women, entrepreneurs, business owners, and content creators who want to grow their business or their audience online. So what does this mean practically? It means that I will be offering coaching and mentoring and additional resources for these women. So in addition to what I've already been doing as with the Christian Woman Business Podcast, I've also started a Facebook group for that community, which if that applies to you, then come on over and join us in the Christian Woman Business community on Facebook. But also I will be doing more offers that will allow me to go deeper with these women, supporting them on their business journey. So I am saying, yes, I am a business coach and a digital marketing strategist who can help you grow your business online, while also helping you stay true to your faith and values. That's something that I had a hard time finding. And if you want to hear a little bit more about that, you can actually go and listen to the latest episode of the Christian Woman Business Podcast. I believe it's episode 27 that just came out last week. And I share a little bit more about how I was looking for someone like that when I was at the beginning stages of my journey, even in the first few years, and I couldn't find kind of the type of person I was looking for. So I'm hoping that I will be able to be that for the women who need it. Now, this also means that I am not going to be creating new courses and programs this year related to leadership. As much as I had some ideas and some thoughts, I had some dreams about what I was going to put out this year that would help you grow in your leadership. I have decided that I have to lean in and focus on one main thing. So I won't be running the Confident Leader Catalyst with live coaching like I did last year. I am also going to be closing down my membership, the Confident Leader Club. As much as I love the women who are there, and I loved my experience of going through the Confident Leader Catalyst last year live with the groups, I know that I cannot continue to try and do all of these different things and do them well. But the good news is this podcast is not going away. So don't worry. I do feel at peace about continuing this podcast. And, Holly is on board with continuing with me, which is just such a blessing. And we love serving you. We love pouring into you. We love just encouraging you on your leadership journey. So this is not going to go away. And the other good news is that because I have already created some of these things, like the Confident Conversations mini course, like Confident Leader Catalyst, and then other trainings and resources that had been taking place inside of the Confident Leader Club, some of those things are going to still be available to purchase if that's something that would help you. Those will still be available on my website. They may or may not be up at the time of this recording. Probably a lot of them will not be there yet, but I am going to still have those things available because there's no point in taking them away completely because they're already created. So I do want you to know that those will still be out there. Now, the other good news is that I am going to run a special offer with the Confident Leader Catalyst coming up very soon. If you're listening to this in real time, this is January of 2021. This will be coming up very soon. And I want to make sure that you don't miss out on that opportunity. If that course is something that you've heard me talk about, or it's piquing your interest right now, there is going to be an option for a self-study version, meaning it won't have the live coaching like I did last year, but it will be available to go through and still get a ton of value out of it and be able to step into your calling with confidence and with clarity and courage. So go ahead and head over to confidentleadercatalyst.com because I will be offering a special that'll be running coming up soon. And that may have some extra special bonuses in it that won't normally be there. So I want to just kind of wrap up with this idea that I want you to kind of take away just hearing my experience of what I've been going through and hopefully just encourage you to step out and really start to consider whether you are fully using the gifts, the strengths, and the passions that God has given you. So I had to really wrestle through this idea of what my gifts are, where I can make the biggest impact, and what God is asking me to focus on right now. And not just what, but also who He was showing me that I could really minister to and encourage and serve at the highest level possible. And this can and does change over time. This is not a one and done thing for most people. We've talked about that way back. I think it's on episode 10 where Holly and I talked about finding your purpose. It's a messy process and it's not something that stays static for most of us. And I can tell you right now, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what it's going to be 6 months from now. I am telling you at this point in time, what God has shown me and where I can see He's leading me in this year. And I'm just trusting Him to continue to reveal the next steps and the path. And it has not been an easy process because I really wanted to believe that I could keep focusing on creating programs and products and services and things that I could do to serve the women in the leadership realm and in the business realm. But to be honest, I started to recognize, as God showed me, that this was just not sustainable. So I want to encourage you right now to do a gut check, to ask yourself some questions that will help you to evaluate if this is something you need to do. Okay, so I have a few questions for you. These will be written down in the show notes. If you need to go back to it, you can go to estherlittlefield.com/episode 136, and you'll be able to see these questions. All right, so I want you to ask yourself, do I know what my gifts are? Do I have clarity around my purpose? Do I know who God has called me to serve with my gifts? Am I walking in confidence and taking courageous action towards those things? If the answer to some of those questions is no, then I would encourage you to head over to confidentleadercatalyst.com and hop on that wait list so that you can be sure to find out when that is open. And again, if you're listening later on, this may just be open for you to grab at any point as a self-study purchase. More questions that you can ask yourself. Am I being pulled in too many different directions? Am I trying to do too much and therefore maybe I'm not having the impact that I could if I focused more? Am I ignoring the signs from God because I am concerned about what other people think if I stop, shift, or change something? If you want some more encouragement about making a shift, last year I did an episode called 3 Shifts You Need to Make as a Christian Leader and How to Make Them. So I walk you through some different ways that God might be asking you to shift or change in your leadership and your life. So you can take a listen to that episode if you want, if you didn't hear it then, or if you just need a refresher. And we also have a lot of amazing stories. I'll try to pull some into the show notes of some of the women in our interview series that we've done in the past who have stepped out and made changes, or who have recognized their true desires, dreams, passions, whatever it might be that God has placed in them. And then they've stepped out in faith and started walking towards them. So I'm going to try to find a few of those to share with you. Ultimately, I want you to know this. When you operate in your gifts, when your heart is desiring to bring glory to God, and when you focus on serving those God has called you to, you will start to become an incredible leader, because you will be making an impact on them. You may not know it, you may not see it, you may not feel like you're making a big difference, but I promise you it's happening. So I really hope that today's episode was encouraging to you, and that it didn't just feel like Esther's telling her own life story right now, but I just want you to know that, and I wanted to be transparent about where I'm at, the process that I've gone through, and also to encourage you that if you're in a similar place, and you're needing to evaluate where you're at and what you're doing, this is the time to do it. Don't keep pushing forward in something that doesn't make sense. And I'm just going to end with a quote that I actually heard on another podcast that I listened to. And I wrote this down when I first heard it. And I re-listened to the podcast recently, and I was like, oh my goodness, I love that quote. And then I realized that I already had written it down. It is from Jennifer Allwood, podcast episode 79. And she said, there is nothing more painful than being stuck in a season or in a place that you no longer belong. So I'm going to say that again. There is nothing more painful than being stuck in a season or in a place that you no longer belong. So sometimes figuring out whether you're in a place that you don't belong, it can be a process. And it's not to say that that place that you are stepping away from is bad or was not meant for that time that you were there. But I believe that God will guide you. If you put your trust in Him, if you ask Him, He will show you the way. And my hope is that you will recognize your gifts, that you will not undervalue them, that you will embrace them, and that you will use them to their fullest. Thanks for joining us on the Christian Women Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, come and join us in our private Facebook community. We would love to get to know you better so that we can make sure the podcast is providing what you need. Plus, you can share your questions and ideas, and you'll be surrounded by incredible Christian women leaders. To join the group, visit estherlittlefield.com/group. Now, don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.